scientists are lost in the swirling maze of past and future ages during the first experiments on America's greatest and most secret project, the Time Tunnel.
Oh, I do hope you liked that beginning. The first clip you saw was from the original Time Tunnel. That was, I think, 66 and 67. And the other one was a clip from the never released pilot of a remake of the Time Tunnel. And it was, I watched more of that clip and it was pretty damn awful. So without further, let's continue on and let's get to the actual introduction to the game. Hi everybody, my name is Harry Jacobs and welcome. I am the North of 60 Gamer and this is Everything Board Games. And today I'm featuring a game about timelines and can you save the world? This Didn't Happen is a card game about changing history to nullify the apocalypse. Can you, fellow time travelers, save the world in time? Or will it collapse in total anarchy and nuclear destruction? I don't know. Let's go down to the table and take a look at this. First, I want to thank John Hefferman for sending me a prototype. So it is very good. It is card-based, so there may be some art changes, there may be some rule changes, but all in all, I have a really good prototype, and I'm going to be showing you that, and we're going to go down to the table. So keep in mind that everything you see today is a prototype and is subject to change both in art and rules. But we are going to make the best of it as we try to save the world in This Didn't Happen. So here we are time traveling and This Didn't Happen is now coming down to my table through the time machine, and here is the box of This Didn't Happen. One of the things that did happen, I will show you this quickly, is dogs. I have dogs. And you can see the dogs did a number on my rules. Fortunately, it didn't hurt it, but that is what happens occasionally in this house. I am very, very careful. Obviously not careful enough because it was on the kitchen table, and one of the big dogs got up and ate it. In fact, it was probably one of the puppies. We do foster puppies here in the Northwest Territories. Right now, I have a big old foster. It is a lab, I think American Eskimo or lab Malamute, probably because he's going to be 60 or 70 pounds. He's huge. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about This Didn't Happen. Here it is down at the table. This is the box that it comes in. It is pretty thick, but I think you could travel with that. I think it's going to take up a little table space because of the way you have to set that up, and we're going to go through the setup. But first, let's pull out the decks of cards and just take a look at the art. Now, I have been through the rules on the website. The Kickstarter is up, and whoops. Okay, that's just the box. The Kickstarter is up, and I went through the animated tutorial and all that good stuff. And if you want to take a look at it, I will put the link in my description. But here is a look at, looks like some resources. We have events that are going to happen, obviously. We have the medieval era. And these are different things I think that are going to happen that we need to trigger to help save the world. The art is okay. I think it's suitable. Here we are. This is the end of an era. This is the Renaissance period. Ooh, apocalypses. Oh boy. And this is Brawl. So these are your characters, and we have different characters here. So this is interesting. I like the way that this has been done. So you could start out on either side. So here is Francis Bisset the Knight, and this is Francis Bisset the Maiden. So there's that type of cards. We have Study Work. We have, what do we got here? Scrounge and Survive. This is Rowan O'Hare, the Visitor. Warning, and I'm not sure what all these, so I don't know all the rules yet. So we are going to be learning this together, and we're going to be setting this up together. So the first thing we're going to do is, we just sort of did that mini unboxing. Now normally I'm going to sleeve, but in this case I think we're going to just leave that for the time being, because it still fits in the box, and I'm not prepared to try to destroy the box to get them back in there. And there are a lot of cards. So I'm going to have to find an alternative to that. One of the things I do have, I think I have an extra one of these laying around somewhere. I might put that game in here. That's just a guard, and it already has another game. So, because normally I talk about organization, but there's not much here to organize at this point. So anyway, let's go and set this game up and take a look at how it plays. So here we are. I have set up the various cards and have sorted them out into the various components. Here we have the medieval era, and that is the first of our eras. We have the Great War era, and we have the lunar era. And we're going to put those out and show you how this board sets up. Over here is the time machine. We have the different apocalypses. This is the resources, and the resources come from the various eras. Now, one of the great things about resources is that you can take a resource from the medieval era and leave it for somebody for the future. You cannot do that in the lunar era, and you can't put it backwards to the medieval. Of course, time always moves forward, so we have to be aware that time always moves forward. We have some paradoxes. The events will either hinder us or help us. We have our time machine, and the time machine has damage, and once the time machine is damaged, that is game over. We have the apocalypses, and we're going to play with the easier apocalypse. And we have, of course, the different characters. And this is a solo, and you can play up to, I believe, 4 people. Yep, there are 4 different characters, and they get injured, and you're going to have to deal with injuries. Injuries, of course, make it harder for you to deal with some of the things that you have to do or some of the tests that you may need to get through some of your events. So we will be looking at that. I don't know how many player counts I'm going to look at this point, but we're going to set the game up a little bit at a time. We're going to see how much table space it's going to take up. I have a very close-up view right now, so we're going to take our camera back up, and we're going to set this board up, and we're going to show you what the setup looks like, and then we'll go from there.
But what I'm most proud of is my son, Sherman.
Hi, Mr. Peabody. Oh, have you told them about the way back?
I was just getting to that. When I adopted Sherman, I vowed to be the best father I could be, to prepare him for all the wonders of the world, present and past. And so Sherman inspired the greatest invention of my life, a time machine. Of course, time travel can be a bit unpredictable. There are bound to be a few mishaps along the way.
Let's just say the Leaning Tower of Pisa wasn't always leaning.
But there's nothing like learning the lessons of history firsthand. Right, Sherman?
Where are we going today, Mr. Peabody?
Not where, Sherman. When?
So we've set this up on the table. So here we are. The game is all set up. We have our medieval era, the Great War era, and the lunar era. These are the various time streams that we're going to be taking our characters to. We have our resources. We have our paradoxes. We have our events. Our time machine is going to start here. And the time machine is going to travel across this way. Here is our end of era. And this is our apocalypse. So our end of era is, of course, the plague, the Allies' victory, and nuclear power. So we're trying to prevent these from being basically destroyed and the apocalypse to happen. And this is the monster. It looks kind of like Godzilla. And we have three of these red symbols that are showing. And what we need to do as a collective time travelers is to match the symbols here throughout our timeline to stop the apocalypse from happening. But at the same time, we have to preserve our timeline. So if ever we get to a point where there are no symbols that match the end here, we're going to cause the apocalypse. So say, you know, this one goes red, it disappears, and a gear disappears. We could cause the apocalypse, or not the apocalypse. We could cause the end of the era to not happen, and of course, at that point, it's nuclear war. So we have to prevent that. as we go along. So we're going to collect resources. We're going to intervene on the timelines. We're going to alter the timelines. We might have to protect the timelines, which means that if we cause a end of era issue, that we fix it. So let's get down to the board and let's take a look at what a turn structure looks like. So while we have the setup, one of the first rules is, now we're going to play with 4, and we're not going to play an entire game. We're just going to show you enough of the game to give you a flavor of how it works. So if you're playing with 4 players, every player past the first player actually does 2 damage to our time machine. Now, so that would leave us with 2. Now, this is going to be a bit of a struggle with me on this table. So I have put a dice here, and you can see it right here on the 2. And we can repair the time machine up to its 8. If the time machine ever goes down past 1, of course, it is destroyed, and we are stuck in time. We can still possibly win the game, because time does move on eventually. But inevitably, if time gets to the end of the eras, we're not going to be able to fix the timeline. So that's how health works. So right now we have only a 2, really. But because of the space constrictions here, or space restrictions, I should say, we are only going to have the dice that's sitting right here. You can just see the 2 right there. We have our players. We have Rowan O'Hara, the visitor, Taylor Alfson, the archaeologist, Francis Bissett, the knight, and Riley Fisher, the fox. We have the different symbols here. Each one of these symbols might help us in an event. Events are going to come up every turn, and we're going to check the events. Each player is going to take an event at the end of the turn, and they're going to have to deal with it depending on where they are in this particular timeline. So the first phase is actually the travel phase. So we're going to go back into our time machines. Now, in theory, these guys are going to, they actually going to start on the machines. So we have red like a Robin Hood for Rowan. We've got a blacksmith for Taylor. We have a knight for Francis, and we looks like we have a little wizard for Riley. These are actually from Meeples of Might. They come in handy now and again when I want to just have a meeple. So the first phase, of course, is the travel phase. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go travel through time. Now this is a bit of a deduction game. We want to be very careful in the timelines as we go. And we don't have any resources, so we know we're going to need to get resources. And we're going to try to stop the apocalypse from happening. So Rowan is going to go through the time machine. And I think Rowan is going to go back to the medieval period where the exile departs. Taylor wants to go a little further, and it's going to go to the Great Warrior. Francis is a little bit on the medieval side again. He's going to go to because he's a knight, so he's going to go to the King Crowned. And Riley wants to go to the Civil Police. Now that is as simple as this gets. So basically in this round where you travel through time, you can either travel out to the time streams, you can come back to the time machine, or at the end of the turn, or you can just sit where you are. Now, when you sit where you are, of course, we are going to move the time forward, and then you can come back next turn. So depending on what you want to do, you may want to stay out in the time and move forward, or you may want to come back to the time machine and do something else. So the next phase is the action phase, and there's a number of actions that you can take. So one of the first actions that each one of our players can take is a resource. And the resources are over here. Now the rule is that you can only have as many as 3 resources in your hand, and you're going to use those resources on various timelines to alter the timeline. So let's just say we want to alter the exile departs because we've peaked and we know that it has one of these symbols, and we want to make sure that we alter the timeline to match one of these red symbols. At the same time, we have to make sure that we don't disturb these symbols here, because you can see these two symbols match what's on the end of era, and if we alter those, this era will be altered, and of course the plague will end very badly for us. And in order to win, all the eras have to be upright. So we can't disturb the timeline as we go across. We're going to take a resource. Now we take a resource on the time stream that we exist. So we'll take this first resource here. And it actually matches that. Now we're not sure whether or not we want to expose that at this point. So that would be dangerous to alter that timeline or intervene on that timeline at this point, because if we pull a different symbol out, we could trigger a apocalypse. So that's also a danger, because if we match a red symbol here, like a red symbol, say, that looks like this, we could trigger the timeline and a domino effect happens. So we might trigger something down the road. So we have to be very, very careful. Again, our Taylor is going to do the same thing, except Taylor here is, of course, in the Great Era. Now, the cards have symbols on the top, and we would use these to match. So you can see we could put this resource down, and what that does is alters the timeline. So it would make this one harder, actually, because we don't have these systems. So we could actually use another one, because when we alter it, when we're adding black, we're either going to match or we're going to make it harder. And by adding symbols, of course, we are protecting the timeline. Our knight is over here. He will take a resource as well. And he is a Knight Templar. Again, he can use this symbol to turn it up. Now, this is one of the symbols that match over here, so he has to be very, very careful. And then, of course, we have our Riley Fisher, who has that symbol there. Now, this is a cooperative game, so your time travelers are in touch with each other. They probably have a little earpiece in their ear, and they're going pss, 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 and talking to each other, or through a big loud tunnel shouting at each other, much like Time Tunnel was back in the 60s. Yes, I do remember that show, and yes, I absolutely love that show. So it was a great show. Now, let's take a look at the next steps. Now, at this point in time, I could lay this card down, but if I did, I don't think there's a big risk here, but if I match one of these symbols when I expose it, I could trigger an alter of that timeline. So let's say these gears showed up here, I could alter that timeline. So at the end of your turn, so we're going to skip over right now. We're not going to do anything else for the first turn. So the next phase is events. Each player in turn order is going to trigger an event. And so we're going to start with Rowan. And you can tell that the card has different colors. And there's what theirs. And each one of the colors match the time stream. And what happens is that we have to look at our character and see if we can resolve this. So what this says is that we are in, of course, the medieval era. And you discover unique materials used for the time machine being mined. If you pass, you threaten the miners and steal the materials, returning them to the time machine if the time machine is healed. Well, the time machine is not healed. Or the time machine is healed. I do not have 3 fists. So again, this event just passes on. We didn't do any harm to the timeline, obviously. Next up is our blacksmith, Taylor. She's going to take a timeline, and it says, "It's Christmas Day. The war seems to stop for a brief moment, and you are given a chance to rest. You are healed." Well, we aren't healed because we weren't damaged in the first place. We will take a look at our knight, who is in the medieval age, and it says, "The local witch hunters are rounding up the odd eccentric for questioning. You try to stay out of their way. If you fail, the hunters find you and put you through various trials, and you are damaged." So we need 2 eyes. We only have 1 eye. So this was not good for us. We are damaged. And when you're damaged, we turn this card over. And now we're damaged. So we're going to want to come back to our timeline. And then thirdly, or fourthly, I should say, we're going to take the event for Riley. And Riley says, the autonomous authorities have begun a random search of the area. You need 3 eyes, of which I only have 1, so we know we aren't going to win. If you fail, they find you in your hiding spot and confiscate some of your contraband. Discard a resource card of your choice. I only have 1 resource card. So at this point in time, that resource card would be discarded. Now, resource cards do not go back in the pile of resources. You run out of resources, you run out of resources in this game, and we're just going to put that off to the side. So that's not a good start. So that is the end of the event phase. So at this point, we're going to experience history. Now, this is where we're going to just take a look at what's underneath us. And we know that we need one of those symbols. So we're going to have to find some matching symbols here. Again, we're going to have to be careful that we don't lose our symbol of a tree here and a gear. And we have a gear. So if we can do something on the front, and then so we're going to research, and we're going to look at 3 symbols here. None of which have to worry. So we don't have to worry about disturbing that particular timeline. This one matches as well. We do have a match here, but again, we have to be careful that we don't lose this gear, or maybe we don't want to hurt this guy. So we could conceivably turn it over. So Riley could turn it over. Our knight is here. He could turn this over, but what does he have? He has a matching. However, he has to be careful. At this point, he doesn't really want to lose that at this point. But he still has one of these symbols, so he could next turn be moved. So he could go back. And of course, the next one here is this symbol here, which we need here, which we don't need. Yeah, we do need. So we do want to start here, but we have no resources whatsoever. So the next thing to do is time actually moves on. I'm going to just move these guys down a little bit. Time moves on. So what's going to happen is our time machine moves into the next era. We're just going to put our dice here. That is a symbol representation of our time machine is moving through the era. What happens is everybody else is also going to move. And they have experienced a time shift because time moves on. So we move to the next card. And then once we move to the next card, the whole time starts over again. So I can stay here and we can do some of the same things, which we might do. We know we don't need this symbol at this point in time. So that's a good thing. Our knight knows we do need this symbol. And the knight has a cross here. And we know that we need that symbol down here as well. But that's just the first of 3. So I think one of the actions that we're going to start with is, again, we're going to take some resources. At this point in time, we have to decide whether or not we're going to travel back to the time machine. We can repair our time machine, but our time machine's not really damaged. But we know that we need symbols that are like under here. There's one there. And that we have a gear there. So I think what the knight is going to do is going to come back. So one of the things that does, this knight comes back. Everybody else is going to stay where they are. So our Robin Hood is going to take a symbol, and this is the jewels, and you can see there is it looks like money actually. I was going to say it's a gear, but it's not. It looks like old money. We are going to take our resource here, Riley. You can see she's got 3 symbols there. That's very nice. And then we have, so we could literally come over here and expose that next turn. And then our knight. And our knight has come back, so everybody's taken another resource. At this point in time, we could intervene. So can we intervene here? No, we don't have a matching symbol. We do have down here, but that isn't going to match this card. So what we're going to need to do at this point is probably going to start to think about coming back. Now, as for the knight, he could repair by losing one of his symbols, but at this point in time, he doesn't have to. He is going to take his turn, and he is just going to heal. So he just turns himself back over and puts his card underneath again. And at any time, he can actually change, flirt to brawl. This is his personality. Think of that. So right now, he's in a flirty mood. So we could intervene, but we can't intervene here. Can we intervene here? Not really. We have a gear and that. We have that, so we could intervene nowhere. So the knight could actually go back up here somewhere, and he could actually intervene, but we do need that symbol. So he could go up and put that symbol somewhere else. When somebody else has that single symbol, they could go up and take that spot. And here we have a total match to this one. So our character may want to come back, our Riley character, which is here, come back to the time machine and go back here and adjust that timeline. So at this point in time, so the first couple of turns we're going to see is that we're going to want to go back to the time machine, and we're going to be flitting around looking for things. So we know we want to turn this over. We know we can, as long as we don't lose that card. Riley can come back next turn and go, just as I think the knight is going to go up and add this symbol here, and then when somebody travels to here and gets a single cross swords, they're going to be able to do that again. So at this point in time, we are going to go and look at the next phase, which is our event phase. So we're going to go up to here, and we're going to have 3 hearts. Members of the church find your equipment heretical. That means you're like a witch and against the church. If you fail, they confiscate one of your items, discard a resource card of your choice. I do not. We don't need this one particularly. We'll just put the event card here. And so we're going to get rid of that resource card. That resource card is going to go to the end here. We are now going to go down to our tailor, who's in the Middle Era, the Great War era. We're going to have the 3 eyes. You enter a library of stolen books throughout the world. If you find a collection of notes and travel and upload the info, the time machine is healed. Again, no, we don't have anything going. Our knight. The knight is not on the time stream at this point, so he doesn't have an event. And then we're going to take our final player, who is on Luna here. And it is, you notice temporal anomalies if you have 3 light bulbs. I don't have 3 light bulbs. If you pass, you gain a better understanding of the travel and upload your discoveries. The time machine is healed. Again, we don't have that. Then we can look. We can experience. We certainly need that, but we don't have that particular symbol going. But we do need that symbol. We certainly need that symbol, but and we still have one of those. Oh yeah, so this would be really good for us because it takes 2 of those symbols, but I don't have that specific card to alter the timeline. So we're going to probably just continue marching through this time looking for this, and then seeing if we can find a match for that symbol. And of course here we have a gear and we can match that symbol, but we do have to keep cognizant of the fact that we need a gear and a sword, which is behind us. So again, we might want to come back and start thinking about going back and get some resources, because we don't have enough resources for this. But we can go back to none of these cards. So we might want to try to think about protecting the timeline at some point. We've done our events, we've done our research. The only thing left to do is that the time is going to march on. Everybody else moves along the timelines. Now we have a matching symbol here. So one of the things we could do is that we could consider altering the timeline. But there's no compelling reason not to pick up a research card, because doesn't seem to be a limit to the number of turns that you can actually take. So I think the first thing everybody likes to do is takes a resource card. Now resources are not finite. Oh, and there we are. This is an interesting one. So we may actually want to come back and do that card. And so we may travel back in time. He's almost at the end of the era. He's at the max now. And our knight, oh, and the thing is, we've moved, the knight is actually going to move, I think the knight's going to move up to, using his time tunnel abilities, I think he's going to start back here. So he too can pick up a resource from that era, and we're going to try to clear off some of that era. This is a good one because if we have to, if we have to expose this one, we can add that. So everybody's picked up a resource. One of the things I can do is I can protect the timeline. So he is actually going to add this card to the timeline. I'm just going to put there to represent that it's there. So now we can protect the timeline. You see, we need one of those symbols. That means we could come over here and turn that card at some point without any ramifications. So that is the knight. We have already taken his turn. I think we don't need that gear, so we don't have to worry about disturbing the timeline. Let's just alter the timeline. So in this case, we're going to match that gear. So we're going to place this one under this. Now, because the symbols match, we're actually going to alter the timeline. So what that means is that we have altered the timeline. And now we have matched one of our symbols here. Now we were very, very careful not to find eliminate a sword or a sunrise with a tree. I wish the symbols were named. It would make it easier. So we have done that. Now we're going to come down to our medieval person. Now I think the medieval person at this point is, at some point, he's going to wind up at the apocalypse, which is absolutely fine because they can grab a resource card, but he's going to come back and we're going to try to start thinking about matching some symbols here. At this point in time, though, there's not much they can do. They can't alter the timeline. The knight has already altered the timeline. I believe we're going to want to come back, and you can hear my dogs in the background. So in the next turn, I think Riley here is going to come back to our time machine and come back over here and expose that particular era and alter the timeline here. So you could also go up here and alter the timeline as well, which might be a good move because we've already looked at that card and we know that there's a couple symbols there that we need. As long as we keep these two symbols good, we're pretty well stacked. So I think that's what Riley's going to think about doing. At this point in time, we're going to do our events again. So first up is Rowan, and she has to have 2 fists, which she does. You are in battle that isn't as one-sided as historians thought it. You attempt to get out alive. If you fail, you are struck down in combat. You live, but the medics of the year can do little. You earn damage. It's 2 fists. We have 2 fists. We actually survive. Our medieval, now we're at the end here, but let's just see what happens in our Great War phase. She's got 2 hearts. He does not. Your charge begins to fail as your allies falter. If you pass, you rally the men into overtaking the trenches. Draw a resource card from this era. Place it underneath a face down, the tile face down. Flip the tiles if you performed an intervene action. Well, we did not pass, so that does not happen. And lastly, we have our knight, or thirdly, we have our knight. You sneak into the apothecary at night, attempt to mix some modern medicine. We fail. If you pass, you create something useful. You are healed. Well, we didn't do that. So most of the events don't hurt you too badly. And then lastly, we have our person here. Crowds pour towards the city gates as lockdown begins as you bargain your way onto a truck leaving the city. 2 hearts, which we don't have. If you fail, you are left in the city to starve and fight for resources. You are damaged. That is the end of the turn. We do our research phase, of course. Well, we've already altered. There's nothing to research there. We know that we have some symbols here, but this is a symbol we need. She has that matching symbol. So Riley is going to have to come back to our machine and then Riley can go over to here and expose that symbol. Next turn. But that is it. Time is going to march on. That means the time machine is going to come down. So far we haven't taken any damage to our time machine, but it could happen. Time marches on. We go to the end of the era. There's not much we can do there other than grab a resource. So everybody's going to move up one. At this point in time, our knight is going to probably, I think the knight's going to come back again to expose that. Sorry, it shouldn't be exposed, but to expose that. Or Riley's going to do that. So Riley's going to want to come back. Wally Fisher come back. And our knight is, Wally's here, sorry. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, our knight did not want to. And our knight's just going to move to the next one. At this point in time, we have all moved. We can do our actions. Well, certainly Riley is going to want to undamage or unheal or heal herself in the time machine. So Roddy is gone. But Roddy at next turn is going to go over to here. We are going to take our archaeologist. And what are we going to do with our archaeologist? Do we have any matching symbols here? Yes. Not really. So it could come down here and start to work on some of these. Okay, so that's what Riley's going to do. We're going to make it easier. The knight is up here. And he is going to just take a resource. He's moving along to get a single resource. We're almost out of resources there. Oh, he has that symbol as well. Oh, that works out very, very well. So at this point in time, the knight goes, aha. So he is going to alter the timeline. So he's going to do the same thing. He's going to place that under here. And then he's going to move this symbol up. So one of the things I just noticed, and I missed the rule. So if you look at these, we actually have that symbol here and here. So I didn't really protect the timeline. So I fundamentally made a mistake earlier on, and we're going to show you that and explain what that mistake was and what would happen. So as I alter the timeline, as you can see here, that we have altered, in this case, we would have lost this symbol because, well, so let's just isolate this a little bit here. So if we look at these two cards right here, and I'm going to, you can see the knight is here, and when we've altered this card, what we've done actually is we've actually inadvertently have changed history in front of it. Now in this case, we didn't change history because we still preserved the history by altering the history earlier. However, here we have the two symbols. So when I exposed this symbol, I actually would have changed this tile right here and would have altered the timeline, because it's not just the symbol, the card that you're on, but all the cards in front of it. So in this case, I would have changed this and altered this card, which would have looked like that. Now, it doesn't cause the apocalypse because we've protected the timeline, but it does create that chain reaction that says I made a little change to the history here. And so anything that's exposed in history could affect the card here. So this would also then wash out. So in order to protect this history, I probably needed to go back here and add another symbol first, and then, like that, and then that would have probably preserved the timeline. That is my interpretation of the rules. I could be slightly wrong.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
So now we have matched 1, 2 swords, and so we've almost stopped the apocalypse. We're okay here. We could try to not damage the time machine. The time machine hasn't taken any damage at this point. So at this point in time, the time is going to, again, move on. Our knight goes here. Oh, we're going to do our events. So we're going to start with our knight. The time machine opens a portal. You need 3 light bulbs. Do we have 3 light bulbs? No, we don't. If you pass, you realize, well, we don't pass. An opportunity and close them. The time machine is healed. Nope, we're good. We don't have any issues there. At this point in time, there's no research to do. Though we can always get rid of these cards, and that would cause a paradox, but there's no need to do that yet. So we've researched, we've done our events. Time is going to move on, of course, so the knight is just going to move on. The time machine is now in the 4th spot. Now, this is all about damage, though. The time machine hits the end of the year. As long as it's not damaged, it's okay. But I don't think we're going to go too much further into this game. I think we've explained enough of the rules. We're going to do one more action round. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to decide whether or not what we're going to do. Let's start with Rowan. Rowan doesn't have to worry about this symbol at this point. So Rowan would be interested in probably going back out to the timeline and trying to maybe protect it somehow. But there's no need for this symbol. So I think Rowan's going to stay there just to show you this action. She's going to use this resource card, and we're going to fix our time machine. So in theory now, our time machine would now have 3. There it is, 3, which would be symbolized if you were using it, you'd actually have this under the card like that, and it would be 3. So there's our time machine here. There is our actual time machine. That's just representing the time machine. So that takes care of her turn. We are going to take Taylor. Taylor has, can we match any of the symbols? Taylor can match a symbol. She has a symbol right here. So Taylor is going to go over here for this time era, and she's going to alter the timeline a little bit by adding a resource card. And of course we have our knight here, or I should say Riley. Riley is going to go over to here. And so at this point in time, we've taken it, we fixed our, slightly out of order because you would wait for your action phase. I guess I got excited. So coming here, this turn has been taken care of. We're going to come over here and actually just put this card here. So now we're just looking for this one symbol. Right, that's the only symbol we need right now, and we can flip this card. The knight is up to here. He is going to take a single resource, and that is the last resource of the timeline. It is another cross. He could add that symbol somewhere and then come back to maybe flip this one. So he might want to look at that. Okay. Lastly, we have Riley. Riley matches all these symbols over here. Riley is going to play with the timeline. So Riley is going to put this under here and alter the timeline, which gives us another cross. So we are actually now 1, 2. We didn't really need to change this timeline, but I just wanted to show you that because we already have what we need here. But it's not going to hurt it. We've hacked the drones, and this is how the game goes on. As long as we don't sort of hurt these, but if we run out of resources, we're going to lose. If we trigger one of these and the time machine is irreparably damaged and we can't fix it, we're going to lose. If we trigger the apocalypse, we're going to lose. But this is how the game plays. I hope I've given you enough flavor to teach you how to play and how to set up. And it's a neat little game in a box. It takes up some table space, which means it's bigger than an airplane tray. So it's not really going to be a travel game, though you could travel, put it in your pocket. But you're going to need some space for it. I'd say a good card table would probably do it. But it didn't happen. So we're going to just pop up for a few final thoughts. So here we are at final thoughts. So what did I think of the game? Overall, I liked it. I do like time travel, and it is a fun theme to play with. I think it's a lot of fun to manipulate the time, and there's a lot of potential here in this game to make it a really, really fun game. I think as a solo effort, I think it's a great solo game. Since I played it solo, I can only tell you that I played four-handed. I probably wouldn't have if I was by myself. I probably only played two, but what I was trying to do is show you some mechanics all around here a little bit faster. All in all, there's some really good things in terms of the events. The game has a lot of moving parts. The rules were a challenge to me. Hopefully by the time we get out to Kickstarter, some of those rules challenges will be taken away, and I did see the next version of the rules, and it did improve what I got originally with the game. The cards are excellent. They are a bit slippy, but this is a prototype. I would sleeve these and you get a little bit more stick factor. If they put a linen finish on this, you probably aren't going to have a slip factor if you have a linen finish to keep them a little bit more frictioned, could I say, or a little bit more from spinning around. I did have a little problem with spinning occasionally when I was setting it up and the cards would spin around. And the idea really is to get those cards underneath, down, and covered, because you're not supposed to see what they are. They're supposed to be a surprise. Once you get into the game, it's a fairly quick flow. You do your time, you decide whether you're going to move or you're going to come back to the time machine. We'll play your resources to try to heal the time machine, heal yourself, trigger alter timelines, protect timelines, and ultimately try to find enough red symbols. So all in all, the premise is very, very simple. I think the game flows very well once you learn the game, but it takes a few minutes to sort of figure all that out. And you saw that I made a mistake, and I cut that in and explained that to you. But ultimately, you have to decide for yourself whether or not you're going to back this game. It is a fun little game. It's going to be, I did see the preview of the Kickstarter. They're still working on the site. Hopefully that I will be there with you, and you can look at this video and you can decide for yourself whether the game mechanics are good, so that you would go out and purchase this game and back this game. I like backing small independent designers and publishers. I think that is what Kickstarter is all about, and I think you should put your support behind this game, because we want to encourage those smaller games, smaller publishers, and smaller designers to jump into Kickstarter and compete against those big monsters that go out that steal all our money. Fortunately, I think going out in January, which I believe he is a good time, because we're right after Christmas. We've just had a number of really big games, and a month ago I would have said this. A month ago this would have been a hard sell, but I don't think this is a hard sell. Anyway, my name is Harry Jacobs. I am the North of 60 Gamer. I thank you for joining us. If you like what you see, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, leave some comments below. Tell me what you think of the game. I certainly would appreciate your comments. Go off and take a look at the preview site when it comes up, and get yourself on the newsletter so that you can be informed when it goes live. And I will put that link below. But I have to check to see, because right now it's a private preview, I believe, and I'll take that out. But that is all I'm going to say. Depending on when you see this, happy holidays, or hopefully you had a happy holidays. But whatever you do, be safe and play games. I'll see you next time. My name is Harry Jacobs.